Though its popularity in the mainstream has waned over the years, the fighting game community remains a staple in the competitive esports scene. The FGC enjoys an incredibly diverse library of games to choose from, the most easily recognizable being Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and Super Smash Bros. And while there have been other games to share the spotlight, none have maintained the staying power as these franchises. But over the last 23 years, there's been a rumbling from the depths, and it's getting louder. Arc System Works, a beloved developer within the FGC, has made their mark producing high-quality fighting games. In fact, nowadays you can't help but hear somebody on Twitter saying that ASW should make insert dead IP or favorite anime into a fighting game. It's practically a meme at this point. And in recent years, their creative lead had shared the stage with titans of the genre like Kazuhiro Harada, Yasuyuki Oda, or Akira Nishitani. And while their brand has grown, their forerunner has not seen the resilience as with the likes of Street Fighter and Tekken. But within its community lies some of the most passionate and skilled players the FGC has to offer. Welcome to Guilty Gear.
Damn it, put that Beyblade on. Ooh, let it rip. Oh! What are you doing?
Gets the concept. The meaning.
First combo! Summon, I can block too, damn it. I can sing me too, damn it.
Actually, boy, you like a martial arts movie. Yo,
here we go!
What? This is Guilty Gear, baby!
Many have dubbed the Guilty Gear franchise amongst the most difficult fighting games to learn. With a high execution barrier for even the most seasoned fighting game aficionados, Guilty Gear's top players are some of the most impressive and mysterious in the FGC. It's a game appreciated within the community, but many watch in awe and slight confusion as duels play out with blistering fury and speed. With Guilty Gear Strive looming over the horizon, Arc System Works is looking to take its flagship title and place it amongst the genre's greatest. So before we get there, let's take a look back at the studio's humble beginnings, a young artist's fantasy world thrusted into the forefront, and a game's evolution from underdog to #1 contender. This is Daisuke Ishiwatari, illustrator, composer, director, savior of the human race. Oh wait, no, wrong script. Ishiwatari has worn a lot of hats over the last 25 years that he's worked with Arc System Works. Starting as an illustrator for 1995's Exector on the PlayStation, he was given the green light to develop his very own fighting game, alongside programmer Hideyuki Anbe, both fresh out of university. Daisuke Ishiwatari led a newly minted team dubbed Team Neoblood through the development of Guilty Gear from late 1996 to the spring of 1998. During his early college years, Daisuke was a massive fan of Capcom's Street Fighter II, but felt that the decline of 2D fighters had come without a game that was truly cool. In a 1998 interview with PlayStation Magazine, he recalled that this dissatisfaction drove him to design these wild and edgy characters while he was attending vocational school. Ishiwatari gleaned from many sources for the creation of his work. His favorite band Queen and their lead singer Freddie Mercury served as the blueprint for his alter ego Soul Bad Guy. In fact, it was his love for hard rock and heavy metal that served as the inspiration for the style, abilities, and personality of the cast. But while he may have had big aspirations for Guilty Gear, Arc System Works' payroll said otherwise. During the time frame of Guilty Gear's development, Arc System Works operated two separate development teams, one working on the JRPG series Wizard's Harmony, and Daisuke's Team Neoblood. With a tight budget and a skeleton crew, Daisuke had to take charge of anything not related to programming. Music, data building, graphic design, marketing, sound effects, and yes, even voice acting. And then, finally, on May 14th, 1998, Guilty Gear: The Missing Link was unleashed onto the masses. Ishiwatari's approach to creating Guilty Gear was to develop a challenging fighting game that would hold the attention of a hardcore fan base. Believing that players can push the limits of competitive play, Daisuke intentionally went against the grain with Guilty Gear's playstyle. Unlike its contemporaries, Guilty Gear is fast, very fast, especially for its time. And where Street Fighter and the King of Fighters lean on the development of the neutral game, Guilty Gear demands blistering execution. A longtime staple of the series, Guilty Gear utilizes the Gatling combo system, allowing low-level normals to chain into higher-level buttons. For example, punches can chain into kicks, which chain into slash normals, then into heavy slash normals. Or, to take it a step further, something like this. And as a result, it's not uncommon to see double-digit combo strings. Each character can charge up a specific special to deal increased damage and yield a more favorable screen position. For those new to fighting games, the typical match is played in a series of turns. Whoever connects the first hit gets to extend their combo, and once that combo is complete, the players poke and check each other to determine who will be the next on offense. Guilty Gear doesn't necessarily play that way, whereas even during your turn, your opponent can use a special universal mechanic known as the dead angle attack to immediately attack after blocking. Players have access to the Perfect Guard, a push block mechanic which prevents chip damage by depleting your special meter, also known as the Chaos Gauge. And like in most fighting games of its time, Guilty Gear gives you access to bombastic super attacks known as Chaos moves. At the cost of 1 full meter, players can whip out incredibly high damaging techniques. However, once a player's life bar reaches 50% or below, certain Chaos moves can be executed with reckless abandon. But the mechanic that defined competitive Guilty Gear, or lack thereof, lied in its instant kill system. Daisuke Ishiwatari made the precarious decision to incorporate a match-ending mechanic known as Sakai, or instant kill, with the purpose to create even more tension between the players. With a swift series of motion inputs, a player can automatically win the match with these over-the-top special animations. It can be countered, albeit so long as you were quick enough to enter the counter input. Did you see it? Did you make the input during the red flash? I guess not. Instant kills were a feature that initially intrigued potential players, having access to what was essentially an instant win special. However, there was no cost, there's no real punishment to using it, and it can be used multiple times in a round. In execution, it received criticism from both hardcore and casual fans alike, taking away from the development of the match as someone was always anticipating the belligerent input. In hindsight, the team concluded that the mechanic's implementation wasn't even necessary, as per Hideyuki Anbei's own words. As our experimentation and tinkering continued, Ishiwatari and I eventually came to the decision that we didn't need the instant kill mechanic after all. But by that point, it was too late to make any major revisions, so we ended up with the systems that you have now. Critical reception was mostly positive. IGN believed that it would be well received by fans, with Randy Nelson praising its unrivaled animation quality. Electronic Gaming Monthly called it the second best fighting game on the PlayStation behind Street Fighter 2. Eurogamer's Wesley Yin Poole called it the greatest fighting game of all time. But Daisuke's wild direction that he led Guilty Gear in was lost on some, like Ed Lomas of Computer and Video Games, calling the character's design unoriginal, and that it's nothing that hasn't been done before. Play Magazine didn't care for the speed and intensity, saying that Guilty Gear takes it too far. And Game Informer, while not outright bashing it, went as far as to condemn it to their top 10 weirdest games of all time. In the casual market, Guilty Gear did pretty well. While there doesn't seem to be any official numbers, it sold well enough to warrant a sequel. However, as with some journalists, there were numerous complaints about the scale and difficulty. According to Anbei, they'd get feedback from the European testers that the game was just far too difficult, and they, quote, couldn't beat Milia no matter what they did. Your game is impossible. At the time, this was Daisuke's goal, to create an environment for highly skilled players, much like the Japanese debuggers that gave the game a green light. Personally, I think that Guilty Gear is a charming but rough first try. Having free reign of supers after dropping below 50% health is pretty absurd, and is the definition of a comeback mechanic if I've ever seen one. Dead angles only exist for the computer, not you, and the idea that you can just drop an instant kill at any time is extremely frustrating, especially when you're on match point. And while I grew up on the game, I can see how fans think that the game is too hard. I mean, there really isn't a more fair way of killing Justice outside of cheesing Jump Heavy to her face. Also, the method to unlock Baiken in this game is absolutely brutal. Clearing arcade mode without losing a single round when both Testament and Justice exist is borderline insanity. The most foolproof way of unlocking Baiken lies in connecting two controllers, and right before you lose the first round in a match, have your buddy hit the second controller just to try again. And that's just... But it makes for a good Friday night, so if you're not doing anything, let me know, because I still haven't unlocked her. Interviews after launch revealed that the relatively short development cycle took its toll on Daisuke, to the point where he was willing to walk away from the IP upon completion. There was a lot of back and forth on the implementation of certain mechanics, and between the backtracking and scheduling resulted in ports for the Sega Saturn, N64, and arcade being dropped. But Arc System Works realized they had something special. While it didn't have a competitive presence, with it only being released on home console, it did generate enough buzz in the sense that there could be an alternative to Capcom and SNK, who was dominating the scene in the late 90s. Thus, Daisuke and company upped the ante. The success Guilty Gear saw for home consoles didn't go unnoticed. Sammy Corporation, typically known for its Pachi slots at the time, started branching out into the arcade scene during the mid-90s, and seeing an opportunity, commissioned Arc System Works to develop a brand new Guilty Gear title in February of 1999. Details on development is sparse, but Daisuke Ishiwatari was only given about 4 months' notice after the North American release in October of '98. Team Neoblood expanded to 57 members and received considerable amounts of third-party assistance from studios like Studio Peacock. Guilty Gear X By Your Side was unveiled at Amusement Expo in February 2000 and released on the Sega Naomi in July of the same year. Since the Naomi shares the same basic system architecture as the Sega Dreamcast, a port was swiftly made, launching as a Japanese exclusive on December 14, 2000. Outside of the graphical overhaul, most of Guilty Gear X's mechanics were carried over from the original entry with few revisions. Dead angle attacks, sweeps, and launchers are now assigned a new input, and perfect guards are rebranded as faultless defense. The chaos gauge is replaced with the tension gauge. Super attacks are now called overdrives, costing only half a bar instead. Instant kills were completely revamped and no longer a free input. Now players are required to press all 4 face buttons to swap their tension gauge for the instant kill gauge. This new meter will continuously deplete until the instant kill has been performed, and should the gauge empty, the player begins losing life instead. Executing instant kills are also no longer automatic, now requiring the attack to connect against the opponent, and should you whiff, you will be punished. A new meter was introduced in the form of the guard gauge, located beneath the health bar. This meter begins to build up when you successfully guard it against a block string, but once the gauge is filled halfway, any successful hit is automatically rendered a counter hit until the gauge depletes back to below 50%. But the most dynamic mechanic added to the game, one that would define the future of the entire series, is the Roman Cancel. At the cost of 50% tension, the player can suspend any attack and hit stun to extend their combos. It forces the offensive player back to a neutral state, whether on the ground or in the air. This allows maximum creativity and freedom of expression, as players are free to pull off some wicked combos. Or, you could be like me and just use the same combo in every game, your choice. Guilty Gear X introduces 5 new characters to the roster, along with a brand new survival mode. Players are assigned a level that will increase depending on their performance against an endless supply of opponents until they reach level 100. Upon reaching level 20, and every 10 levels thereafter, players are subjected to a Daredevil match, where a beefed-up golden enemy with maximum tension tests the player's skill and resilience. I beefed it here against Faust. Guilty Gear X saw a release overseas on the PlayStation 2, but was also the first game to see a number of revisions and spin-offs, the first being with Guilty Gear X Plus for the PlayStation 2. Plus added GG1 favorites like Cliff Underson and Justice, and expanded the selectable moveset and mechanics from each of the previous games, so long as they were unlocked in survival mode. And story mode was added to supplement the arcade mode in a visual novel style with branching paths. Guilty Gear X Advance Edition launched for the Game Boy Advance in 2002. Being a handheld title, and a garbage one at that, X Advance offers simplified control options, allowing for 3 or 4 button gameplay. As with other fighters on the Game Boy Advance, there is a bit of a problem trying to nail input commands. Watch me try to land this wild throw. I was convinced this game didn't have Roman cancels until I accidentally did it here, and I am unable to do so since, so. There's also Tag Team and 3-on-3, which if you ever played any Capcom Versus game, you know what you're getting into. But unlike any Capcom Versus game, you don't end up playing against the same 3 or 4 characters over and over again. On to better games, Guilty Gear X 1.5 released for the Atomus Wave in early 2003 with minimal changes. As it was built for the arcade, it doesn't feature any of the bells and whistles the home console version has, but several characters were given an expanded moveset. As for the obscure, there is Guilty Gear Petite and Petite 2 for the Wonder Swan Color. These were directed by Emiko Iwasaki, one of the few times that a Guilty Gear project was led by someone other than Daisuke. It features an art style very similar to that of Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix, with a limited cast from both Guilty Gear X and X+. Guilty Gear X is actually my first venture into the series, so I've kinda got a soft spot for it. Fixing the core mechanics makes the game seem fair, or rather as fair as it can be, outside of its crazy unbalancing issues. The FDC glitch, or faultless defense cancel, was absolutely broken. You're able to cancel your Gatling string by performing a sweep into faultless defense, suspending the animation, going back into neutral while the defending player is still in hit stun. This creates a pseudo touch of death scenario where the victim enters a stun status so that you can push for instant kill. But as a filthy casual at the time, X was a lot of fun and totally indoctrinated me into the cult of Daisuke Ishiwatari. I enjoyed being that guy going to my friend's house, game and pack, and exposing him to the world of Guilty Gear X. For about 10 minutes until they traded instant kills and finished off the night with rival schools. Sammy reported a profit of 248 million yen for Guilty Gear X's Japanese arcade version. The Dreamcast version sold just under 100,000 copies in its first week alone, and the combined sales of Guilty Gear X and X Plus topped 250,000 units worldwide. Reception for Guilty Gear X was very positive. IGN's Anoop Dantiet called the Dreamcast version possibly the finest looking 2D game ever, thanks to its high-res graphics, special effects, and smooth animation.
Great.
Passivin of GameSpot highlighted the precise controls, and James Fudge of GameSpy noted that while the gameplay was easy to pick up, it isn't dumbed down enough to annoy expert fighting game fans. But Sammy Studios wasn't just satisfied with Guilty Gear X, because even as Advanced Edition was being released into the Japanese market, and before X Plus wrapped up production, the publisher announced one more round of Guilty Gear games to be unleashed onto the masses. Hey guys, just wanted to thank you for sticking around for part 1 of the Guilty Gear retrospective. To be honest, I got halfway done with the script and realized that this was looking to be more than double the length of my Anarchy Reigns video. Speaking of which, if you would like to see more of my content, please check out the previous video on the chaotic development of Anarchy Reigns. And as always, please give a like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more Guilty Gear and other projects I have in the works. Until next time, take care.